Welcome to GIRT by API, the podcast that takes the serious questions and gives calm answers. I'm Ethan, and
I'm Owen,
and this is the second episode, I guess. So go back and listen to the first one if you want a bit more of a background. I don't know. Anyway, I'm trying to put API together, and Owen's a bit of brain behind it. I didn't say big brain this time.
Small brain.
Small brain.
Small, soft brain.
Small. We love mushy brains. Anyway, look, we'll get into it. So the topic for this week is the populist right rising because of economic or culture, or is it something else? Is that kind of the opening question?
Yeah.
Yeah? That's what people will be Googling. Yeah. So I guess we'll jump into it. Or is there something if you wanted to add before we...
No, let's go.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Owen, my dear.
Yeah.
Are we actually seeing a global shift, a political shift, or commentators overreacting?
No, I think the shift is definitely happening, and I think it's happening all over the world. I mean, you've got Reform's polling in first place in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and they've decimated the sort of legacy Conservative Party. In France, you've got Le Pen. In Germany, you have Alternative for Deutschland, which are polling pretty high.
Yeah.
And they're quite explicitly sort of, white supremacists. Obviously, Trump in the States, and then now lagging behind, Australia is sort of having its turn in the populist right sun with a big surge in polling for One Nation.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Would that have happened? Because I feel like there's a delay though in Australia compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Like naturally that happens with any, there might be a global invention and it takes like 3 years for us to implement it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We're a bit slow at
so
times.
just a bit tardy for getting to the, yeah.
Like we want everyone else to work out the kinks before we adopt it.
Okay. Well, hopefully we're not doing that with the populist right in Australia, but
yeah, I'm not either. I'm not
yeah.
condoning it. I'm just like, yeah.
Looking at some polls that put One Nation second,
Mm-hmm.
or I think recently sort of closer to the Liberal National Party.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at most polls for state and federal in Australia, obviously the state in Victoria and federal in, it's really looking like a sort of a minor party
surge.
Yeah, and it's looking like there's a lot of different parties that are sort of
Mm-hmm.
polling really high. So we're gonna have some very interesting elections coming up for sure.
Yeah. So if this is a structural thing, or not just a trend, what explanations do serious analysts offer?
Okay, so I'm going to put up maybe like 3 theories today.
Yep, and then we'll go through them.
Yeah, we'll have a crack. So the economy, the declining living standards, rising inequality. It's hard to buy a house. Rent's getting more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
The value of a wage feels like a slipping away. Like you work really hard and then you don't feel like your money goes as far as it used to, or I suppose the theory is that leads into this nostalgia where you sort of long for Australia far gone, and then under this sort of economic argument, it's sort of the One Nation's just scapegoating migrants. And then if we could get the economy more sort of, pumping and more evenly distributed, then, the theory goes that the One Nation vote would slip away. I think I heard someone say the other day, if you could buy a 3-bedroom house for $200,000, then One Nation would be polling at 1%. So that's the theory.
Well, if that is the theory, wouldn't they want that to be the primary goal of the government to solve?
I think every government's trying to solve that problem. I don't think there's any government that wants people to be poorer. At least I wouldn't say that out loud. And I think, a lot of governments they're trying really, really, really hard. And, there's a lot of headwinds. Obviously COVID, big shock, and inflation. There's been inflation all over the world. And, under this guise, that sort of, I guess, excuses the cultural or racial elements of the surge in the vote, because then you sort of go, well, these people are just hurting and they're they're looking for a way to show their displeasure.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's sort of manifesting in this big vote for populist right parties around the world.
Yeah. Okay. So that's number one. You mentioned something about culture in there. So
yeah.
is that the second?
And then I suppose the second one is the cultural anxiety, which is, a little bit, I guess, like uglier and, is a bit more divisive. And, it's sort of saying that it is actually immigration. There are actually racial tensions.
Like people feeling like culture's disappearing from under them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or this culture that we feel we have in Australia.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes you have to like listen to people when they're talking to you. Like if people are talking about the great replacement theory or, cultural Marxism and stuff like that, and, that you should, that's another sort of factor in this. And then the third one, which I think is really interesting, is this idea of, the polarization happening from social media.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think we could probably talk about
just touching base on that, like because it's marketable or profitable to have people get angry on social media, so then that keeps pushing people further apart.
Yeah,
that's the content that gets views.
I think it clearly is.
Yeah.
This is like the algorithm sort of working to it rewards things that upset people, and it's like people have this media diet, and in eras past there were more gatekeepers for that media ecosystem.
Harder to publish to a broader audience.
Yeah,
back in the day,
whereas people would have been watching commercial TV in the 90s, now they're scrolling on their phones, and there's it's sort of like a much more wild frontier of media and news consumption and so the theory goes
like like the social media seems to be at least highlighting and weaponizing the cultural or the economic front.
Yeah, totally.
It feels like they're funneling into it.
Well, I think it probably the cultural anxiety probably plays better on social media than the economic stuff. Is that I think like people talk about inflation and tax policy and stuff. It's pretty dry.
Yeah.
Pretty boring. But there was a thing I saw. Advance Australia, the right's sort of version of Get Up, which is supposed to be sort of a campaigning wing of the right of politics in Australia. I saw some social media posts that were just like sort of glowy, pretty looking, shots of all of these white families swimming at Bondi Beach, and and then
real footage or AI generated.
Well, that's a whole other kettle of fish.
I've recently been getting a bit of this AI generated slop stuff that's like,
yeah, right.
Look how good Australia used to be, and there's kids riding their bikes down the streets, and there's like 4 Commodores in the driveway, people having barbecues in the backyard.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Well, yeah. If the
and then it's like what it used to be like.
If this is internet number 4.
Yeah, the 4th iteration of the internet. Yeah.
This might sound a little bit like in the weeds, but like in like media theory, there's 3 sort of iterations of the internet, and the first one is I'm 34, so I was probably just young enough to sort of know this iteration where the internet's all just sort of these like single pages, and you sort of type in the URL and go and read that. They're like, and there's like blogs and and then the second stage was probably like MySpace and Facebook, where the networks started happening. And then now we're in this third stage where it's sort of like this algorithmic thing and this vertical video, and everything's, really dialed in and niche. So it's, the groups that you're sort of seeing on the internet are just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the argument goes that, people get siloed, and then they get, it's like an extremism sort of creation tool, like everybody's got like
they're becoming less diluted, more like when you reduce a sauce in the kitchen or something,
Yeah. So, like everybody's, I think everybody's got like a personal story of knowing somebody who's, like gone down this sort of YouTube rabbit hole of whether it's like anti-vax or aliens or.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of people that have experienced
9/11.
2 different kinds of Christmases, like one before COVID and one after COVID.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then COVID just like turbocharges it because, COVID everybody's locked in their house with nothing to do except stare at their phone, and they're like stressed and anxious. And then the phone's like pacifying them and titillating them and enraging them. And it's like it's an addictive cycle. And then, and then you sort of have this like these kind of extremes that set in
metastasize.
And that argument says that we're seeing that extreme of the COVID, like polarization from the social media sort of manifesting now in a strong primary vote for One Nation. That's sort of another, I guess, theoretical argument.
Yeah, like Dan Andrews before COVID was just a nerd that liked trains. Yeah. And then afterwards it's Dictator Dan. But anyway,
that's really interesting. Like, Dan Andrews, I quite liked Dan Andrews through the lockdowns and everything. I thought he was like a conviction politician that a lot of people, even if you might have disagreed with him on some things, like people like authenticity, and I thought he was a very authentic communicator.
Yeah. We get to know him every day.
Yeah, and I personally like Dan Andrews, but like living in Victoria and the lockdowns and seeing the like this sort of burning hate almost from people. Like I'd meet people at work or just
still to this day,
and people really were furious at Dan Andrews, and yet he every time he ran he kept winning more seats and more votes, and like there was this like silent majority, which is usually like conservative coded terminology that like, oh, there's a silent majority that doesn't like all this woke culture, blah blah blah. But like the silent majority in Victoria voted for Dan Andrews, so it's kind of interesting. I remember having like a funny conversation with somebody who just at my work, like I was working like retail, and someone came in and they just said like, Dan Andrews ruined my life. And I'm like, people keep voting for him.
Yeah. Like he'd be premier right now.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And probably the next term as well.
Probably.
If you wanted to.
We'll see what happens. So on that front, so I guess we'll narrow in on the economic slice of the pie, economic third of the pie.
Yeah.
The most common explanation is the economic grievance. People feel poorer. Is that actually supported by the data in like, post GFC political spheres, or how has, in Western living standards, has it after globalization, has it changed or?
Yeah, it's tough, there's all these neoliberal reforms, free markets, globalization,
from like that 80s, 90s,
from
early
80s,
2000s
90s, so in the United States they had NAFTA, which opened up, trade with Mexico, and, the story goes that it hurt a lot of manufacturing, a lot of traditional blue collar jobs, and hollowed out the industrial Midwest, and, and created this breeding ground for a realignment of politics in those working class areas away from Democrats towards Republicans. And the Democratic Party becomes more professionalized, and the Republican Party, depending who you ask, maybe strangely sort of becomes the home of this like disaffected sort of working class. And this is like not what I think necessarily. I think it's like, the framing of working class, it sort of gets like tangled up with whiteness in this way that it, and class is such a big can of worms to open up, because everybody has a different idea of class. Like, there's people who own, $200,000 a year or $300,000 a year, and they say they're working class because they like AC/DC or they
were raised by working class parents, and they still probably wear that title.
Yeah. And then like, I don't know,
that thing of like politicians,
Yeah. Well, every politician's working class, and they're all
$200,000 a year.
Yeah. They're all in like the top percentiles of income earners. So and asset holders as well. Like, so yeah, it's thorny talking about class. But yes, and the reason why I say that about, the industrial Midwest is because, like, in
the US Midwest. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like immigrant workers working in H&M are working class, and they don't, or like nurses, or, like, and they sort of fall out of this, like, this sort of cultural framing where to be working class, you have to be working in manufacturing or agriculture or construction, and it's very blokey, and it's kind of it's maybe unhelpful, but like you're
like that hollowing out of the working class in the US as an example, right?
Yeah,
for the rise of Trump and all that.
Yeah,
with NAFTA as the example.
Yeah,
where it became cheaper to set up the factories in Mexico.
Yeah.
Finish off the production of cars or any other manufactured goods and then ship them back into the US.
Yeah.
At that cheaper labor.
Yeah.
But then the price of the product still stayed the same. And then people's wages have come down, or they haven't grown with inflation.
Yeah.
So then these people can't afford the products that they used to be made in their country. But the price is still the same. And then there's this, where's that money going?
Yeah.
Possibly corporate greed, who knows? But that's a different topic. But
well, this is really interesting because some things have become a lot cheaper, like through globalization.
Especially with China becoming the factory of the world.
Yeah.
Especially during that period.
Yeah.
Of basic goods. And now they're a bit more advanced.
I mean, the West has always had a sort of a global South factory of some description.
This was in somewhere else.
Like in the we're probably getting like way in the weeds of history or whatever, but in the Industrial Revolution, to have the amount of food that industrial workers in Britain needed, they needed colonialism to farm to send the grains. So they had this 2-tier world economy where you have this industrializing West.
Like India was the rice bowl for the UK.
Yeah, that's the story. And then now, that moves into this sort of next layer where the West becomes, at least the wealthy West, becomes professionalized, and they sell services, and there's finance.
They chase those air conditioning jobs.
Yeah, and
working in an office,
and then they buy industrial products that are made in
Mexico.
Yeah.
And then Mexico's living standards come up, and
Mexico's
then it's like, let's make it all in China.
Mexico's living standards are quite high now. Yeah.
So then it's all made in China. Now China, has gone through their phase of building their middle class. And now things are being manufactured in Vietnam. Yeah.
Or Bangladesh or
or parts of India.
So like the dry economist argument, like the Milton Friedman types of the world, they would say it's bad to protect industries because it's good for the producers, but it's bad for the consumer. And the producers are allowed sort of minority pressure group, because they can go to a government and say, if our production factory closes in our town, it's going to be this disaster and all these people are going to lose their jobs. And then, the Milton Friedman types, who I don't agree with fully, would say, but you're forgetting about the consumer who misses out on having the cheaper products from globalization. And
I guess as an Australian example is when we had all the tariffs and the protection laws in place to keep Holden producing in this country. And then they could sort of, in a way, charge whatever they wanted, and the consumer suffered, essentially. They'd have to pay a high premium for a Holden car. Yeah.
Or they'd actually have to, with protectionism, they would have to pay more for cars made in
that as well,
in Japan and Korea as well.
Yeah.
So the idea is that they talk about total welfare, total welfare gains, government intervention and protectionism and anti-free trade sort of social movements reduce total welfare. They might distribute it differently, but overall there's like an efficiency loss, because people are working in underperforming industries that are being protected by the government and they're not as efficient as if you were just to buy it from overseas.
Yeah.
Which it makes sense in a global order where democracy is ascendant. The Berlin Wall falls. It's the end of history.
Yeah.
And we can all come together and trade, and we're going to be peaceful, and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. Who said that? It was like, this is the end of history.
Oh, we'd have to.
I know. We'll have to look it up.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up.
There was someone who was saying that.
Yeah. So this is a really big question. And
last time I checked, the clock's still going, so I don't think it's over.
Yeah, totally. Well, history's come back in a bad way.
Yeah. It rhymes.
Recently. Like, I think you got Brexit, the sort of populist canary in the coal mine. 2014.
England's issue is a bit of a different thing where they've, again, similar to the US, where they've hollowed out their manufacturing.
Yeah.
And then just basically turned England into, there's London, which is the bank.
Yeah.
The bank of the world at the time.
Quite wealthy.
Yeah. Then there's just the rest of it.
Yeah.
The fields,
which
where
is
they live, whatever.
In terms of like GDP per capita, if you take London out of the UK, the rest of the UK is more like an Eastern European country. Like it's quite poor.
Yeah, it's poorer than Poland, I think.
Yeah.
I think I saw, yeah.
Which is,
Poland's on its rise. That's pretty cool. Go Poland.
Yeah, go Poland. Oh, they're in, are they in the EU? Anyway, so the British people vote basically to put economic sanctions on themselves. They vote to cut trade ties, make their businesses less competitive. And Michael Gove says people are sick of experts. When the experts say, this is a bad idea, you're going to cut economic growth. We're going to be poorer. You're going to have to pay more tax. And for less services, and because the economy is going to shrink because we're not going to be trading. And then Michael Gove says we're sick of experts, which is really instructive.
Yeah.
Is that, you say in the UK that, the experts in the populist framing caused the crash.
They kept blaming it on them, yeah.
They caused the crisis, like all of the technocrats and all the technocrats in government were blind walking into this global financial catastrophe, and then people are really upset about it. So thus Brexit, thus reform, and this is the economic argument, and there might be something to it. I mean, so we'll put a graph on the screen. It's a paper by Lackner and Milanovic, and I hope I'm saying their names right.
Not the tennis player.
I don't know if there's a tennis
there isn't.
player.
I was just.
Okay. It sounds like a or like a curling.
Yeah, sounds like a curling team.
Yeah. Did you see that curling?
The Canadian with his finger.
Yeah.
Yeah, the touch of God, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was funny.
Anyway, very topical. Yeah.
So this graph shows before the crash
in the UK or the GFC in general.
The world. This is rising incomes by global income percentile. The global income percentile is you probably would have heard Bernie Sanders talk about this, the 1%, the 99%.
Yeah, don't get me started on the 1%.
You sound like a mob boss. We've both got bad Bernie Sanders impressions. This is really interesting.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm going to sort of go through the graph from the bottom to the top. So at the bottom, you see
to the far left of
the left of the graph, you see the poorest people in the world, the bottom 5%.
In developing countries.
This
in
is
Africa or Southeast Asia.
Sub-Saharan Africa. This is seriously poor people, living off $2 a day, food insecure, the backbreaking poverty. Little change, very little change there. And then it jumps up, so around that 10% mark up to
the change time period we're talking about, was it 1998 to 2008?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So between the 10th percentile and the 65th percentile, this is the developing world.
Which would be Latin America.
Yeah. And China and
Eastern
India.
Europe.
And so they've nearly doubled their real income.
Yeah.
And sorry if this is people may know this already, but the real income is your income minus inflation.
Okay.
So if you have a nominal pay rise of, say you get a $10,000 pay rise and you're a 10% pay rise, but inflation's 10%, your nominal income has gone up by 10%. Your real income has not moved.
Okay.
So
and a graph like this can only be generated if you pick a specific period of time, start to finish, and then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But we're looking at real income. So this is genuine big rise in living standards, which is kind of a miracle. I mean, it's sort of like the miracle of the the last 50 years is all of these developing countries.
Especially in China alone.
China is an incredible. I mean,
like in 50 years, turning everyone from farm rice growing poverty,
like 1 billion people out of subsistence poverty into like something looking like the middle class, despite all of the horrible human rights abuses and authoritarianism. And, you know, there's definitely lots of bad things about China. That story is actually like, you know, depending who you ask, maybe one of the greatest, you know, eradications of poverty ever.
Yep.
So that cohort has nearly doubled their real income. Their lives are, you know, we can get into discussions about the good life and whether, you know, it's actually nicer to live on a farm and grow your own food or whatever. But, you know, like based in economics, like their standard of living nearly doubled, which is, you know, huge.
Yeah.
But from the 65th percentile up, this you can see on this graph, it just takes a nosedive.
Which is people that would have been in the developing world from end of World War II up to now. You know, people that Western world, like
the Western
England,
world, developed countries,
Western Europe, USA, Australia,
West. These are developed countries. So the 65th percentile up to the sort of 95th percentile, their living standard has not gone up by as much, or between the 75th and 85th percentile, their standard of living actually fell between 1998 and 2008. And then the richest obviously got a lot richer, but you know, that's kind of trite. The rich get richer.
But then, like, if you look at this graph, it feels like there's a bit of a dearth. But then that dearth seemed to have gone to that top 1%. Yeah. Well, that's the Bernie Sanders argument.
Yeah. Totally. And it was true.
The developing world's middle class wealth has migrated to the upper 1%.
The developed world, so the Western world, the poorer people in Western countries, their incomes fell in real terms between 1998 and 2008, and then the global financial crash happened, and then that made that much, much worse.
Yep.
So the global financial crisis, you know, really, really, really hurt Western countries. Australia is a strange exception. Like I was living in Spain after the crisis. There was 50% youth unemployment. 1 in 2 people under, I think, 30 didn't have a job.
In Spain?
In Spain.
No way.
And it just felt, you know, like it was hopeless.
A lot of amigos with nothing to do.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
And Spain's economy is actually doing quite well now, but
they're kicking back. I think they're probably one of the only countries that are like, give me your immigrants, we'll take it.
We could probably do another episode on that. There's an interesting thing going on in Spain and Portugal with naturalizing their undocumented immigrants, and leading to this sort of big rise in GDP, much higher than the rest of Western Europe, which is interesting. But yeah, basically, so like if you're saying like there's a rise in right populism because of an economic downturn, there has been an economic downturn in Western countries, and there has been a rise in right-wing populism with Brexit, Trump, and then now Reform outpolling the Conservatives and Labour in the UK, and now there's a lagged sort of effect happening in Australia with One Nation polling above the coalition.
Like I'll ask about the lag in a second, but so with the graph, that only goes at 2008?
Yeah.
From the 90s to 2008.
Yeah.
There's been that much of a change in your living standards, real dollar worth, right?
In that period of post big globalization.
Yeah. So then can you pin this tail on the donkey of economic issues? Because there's been a delay in general. If we look at the graph, then something should have happened in 2008.
Yeah.
Or 2010.
Yeah.
You know, this right-wing surge should have happened sooner.
Well, it did in the UK, you know, and
with Brexit in 2016,
2014 Brexit was.
Oh, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
So there's a crash, and then the banks get bailed out and living standards fall. There's austerity as well.
Yep.
So
a lot of services being cut.
The Cameron government cut, which is in you know, like Keynesian economics, where you're supposed to pump the economy when it's not doing well, and then pull the brakes when it's overheating.
Yep.
doing austerity after the global financial crisis was not in the economic textbooks. Like that was, kicking someone when they're down, so to speak.
Yeah, not the best move.
I mean, yeah,
because I think there's the go-to explanation of there's Nana, she gets her pension, she goes to the chicken shop every Friday, that chicken shop gets their money, they're able to buy more chickens, the market's going good, the company, that chicken shop pays their taxes,
yeah,
they hire people, they get wages, blah, 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 it all rickles out into the economy, how that works. But then if the pensions get cut on Nana, right, and any other plethora of demographic or whatever in the UK, any other pensions or wages for nurses or whatever get cut or stagnate or don't grow with inflation, then that's money that's not going back into the economy and cycling through. Yeah. I think that's how I've heard it explained.
Yeah, totally.
The effect of this austerity on an already struggling economy.
Yeah, totally. Austerity makes sense if you've got really, well, I don't know, it's cruel either way, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's a big blunt tool. It's like taking a sledgehammer to knock in a little pin.
Yeah.
Same with, the central banks raising interest rates really extremely.
Yeah.
Really hurts a lot of people, even though it might be the right thing for the economy macro.
Because this feels like another conversation we could have about like you can't, or can you not treat a country's economy like a household budget? You know what I mean?
Yeah, we should do an episode on that.
Because like at the moment, as an example, right, mortgage repayments are up.
Yeah.
But everything else is down. So like what happens is when the budget is tight in a household, they pay off the debts first, which is what the UK's approach was. It's like, we need to tighten the budget, pay off our debts, get ahead, I don't know. There's an episode there, but just thought of it then.
I like this household budget analogy because people think of a household budget like they're like going to Woolworths and buying their groceries for the week and they're planning out how much money they need to have left for their bills. But what about a house? A house is a giant whack of debt that you go into because it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So
why can't a country's economy be like a debt?
So if you say that the government shouldn't borrow to invest in stuff because it's a household budget, well, the house in the budget is a huge investment that they had to borrow to.
Yeah.
Anyway,
like at some point you'll need to renovate the house, so you may borrow some money or get a bit on your get that deck built. But then that increases the value of your house, which increases the value of your country. And then you invest in that rail,
and you pay it off, and then,
who knows?
But the value of the house goes up, hopefully more than the value of the interest payments, and then it's a sound investment. Yeah. So we just
that's a whole episode. Thank you.
We just dispelled the myth about the household budget. You're welcome.
Job done. No other podcast has done it before. You're welcome. Sorry, back to you. Yeah. All right. So wanted to touch base on that and explore what the austerity does. So you were mentioning the lag. So why do you think Australia had a lag behind Brexit and Trump?
Because we did so well in the global financial crisis.
Yeah.
If you take this theory that the rise in populism is because of an economic downturn, Australia didn't really have an economic downturn in the GFC.
I think we were one of the only countries to stay afloat during that 2008 period.
Yeah, and Wayne Swan, one of my personal sort of like, I think he's probably like, I think he doesn't get his flowers. I think he was a great treasurer. I mean, he won that award for best finance minister in the world.
And Trump himself complimented him.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Well, yeah. So, his critics would say there was a bunch of other things happening in the economy that he doesn't get to take credit for, like China building all of this, all these buildings that needed Australian iron ore and whatnot. But also like Australia's superannuation money pool really helped us.
It's a very unique thing globally.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. And then there's also,
I think I've heard it described as a shadow government.
Right. There you go.
The superannuation.
It is an incredible thing. It could definitely be harnessed to do some real good.
Mm-hmm. Those kind of factors. So
also this is like good economic management is like there is a crash. The government's going to spend money to stimulate the economy to make the crash less bad.
Yeah.
Which is, the Kevin Rudd's, everybody got a
$800
check, and then they went and bought a TV. Which is,
I got new footy shoes at the time.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So, and that was good economic management because there's a crash happening. We need to stimulate the economy. This is the opposite of what the UK did,
which comes back to the chicken analogy. If Nana got $1,000, she could have bought many chickens at that chicken shop.
Yeah.
in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And if the problem is that the nanas of the world don't have enough money to spend in the chicken shop because there's a credit crunch and, the banks aren't lending and there's, all of this insecurity, then, the government can step in and say, here you go, have some money and then go buy your chickens.
Which could be another discussion there of, there is the risk of inflation on that front.
Yeah.
But that's a different conversation.
Yeah, totally.
Which probably becomes relevant when we get to the history part, like as we get through this history lesson.
Yeah.
As we come up to
now
the COVID period.
Yeah.
And all that sort of stuff. But we'll get there in a second. So just to summarize, in history, the reason why Australia probably had a lag, one, the government was doing stimulus checks.
Yeah.
To try and keep the economy boosted.
The government did a good job of staving off the effects of the global financial crisis in Australia.
Two, we had the superannuation still kicking money around the economy.
Yeah.
I think you said there was a third one.
Oh, and iron ore in China.
Yeah.
The minerals. We had a minerals boom.
Yeah. We had the materials the world needed.
Yeah.
To build.
Which made our economy look better. I mean, there was like I was living in Perth. There was some nasty rent spikes. They're not as bad as now, but there was a little bit of disruption caused by the mining boom, but overall,
because of people moving into work.
Yeah.
Okay.
But overall, the story is like it was good for our economy in that time, and it wasn't something that the UK had.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So yeah, so we did quite well, but I think it's interesting to think about. We've skipped over another little bit of Australian history, which was the recession in the early 90s. So and this is
during that globalisation expansion period.
Yeah. So and then there were recessions in other parts of the world as well, but
I think ours was tied similar to the Asian economic crash as well, wasn't it? Australia in the 90s, the one that happened in the 90s, Asia countries. There was an economic crash.
Yeah.
And then ours was similarly tied to that.
Yeah. I'd probably have to look into it. I can't remember.
Because I know that, the UK was going through a banking boom at the time. The US was doing their thing.
Yeah.
NAFTA and all that. So there was no room for a recession there in their countries, but we did because our neighbours did.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
We'll fact check. We'll get back to you.
We'll get back to you on that. But yeah, I actually don't know. So you're probably right. But the thing I want to say was that there's a recession in the early 90s, and about 5 or 6 years later, there is a big spike in One Nation. So One Nation didn't exist before then.
96 was the boom. The One Nation spike.
Yeah, totally. So they win
the original
seats.
Iteration of One Nation.
They win a bunch of seats. They really scare the Liberals. And by this economic story, there's all of these people who are Gen X who had a false start in their economic lives, and there were also people who were older who lost their jobs and didn't get jobs again, and they went from having good jobs to being on the dole, and they never got back into the workforce, and they lived, and the regions were hit harder than the cities, and so this creates this like sort of percolating pressure cooker for a populist right party to come in and take advantage of that disaffection and that economic displacement and rattle the center right, which they did. And then after that, there's sort of this like economic boom in Australia. So maybe if it's just the economic rationale, then
which ties in with China having its boom.
Yeah,
because they were buying our resources, being the factory of the world, because of the globalization. Of the 90s. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then Australia's just like a pretty wealthy place, I mean, it still is, but yeah. So and then it's interesting that history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. I guess what's that saying? But now we've had this shock, COVID. We've had inflation, which is really corrosive to public trust, and really, I mean, it just makes life harder because you're just like
But this time, this inflation is more tied to a supply-demand issue because, international shipping's slowed down a lot.
Yeah, that's a part of it. The RBA doesn't think it's the biggest part though.
Okay.
And they think they thought that it was caused by excess demand in the economy. So it wasn't. Supply chains had an effect, but the RBA thought that the biggest driver was actually government largesse and overspending
because
JobKeeper.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah. So the difference is people were receiving the stimulus check as we did in the GFC.
Yeah.
But because there was no supply to meet that demand.
Yeah.
Because everyone had more money, so demand goes up.
Yeah.
Like global shipping slowed, so supply goes down.
There's less stuff.
Yeah, there's less stuff,
more money.
people to buy, more money, inflation.
And then if you have a shop, you go, well, I've got 5 things and 10 people want them, so maybe we can have a bidding war.
Yeah, I can bump up the price. Toilet
that's
paper is
the theory.
popular. Let's check the price up on toilet paper.
That's the theory. So there's an interesting story about toilet paper actually. This is a bit of a
little diversion. Let's go.
Everybody thought that there was like a toilet paper shortage because people were being like greedy and hoarding it. But like this is like kind of, if you think about it, like people like use the toilet paper in the rolls at home, and then if you work in like a big building or something, the big round ones.
Yeah, they were still available.
Yeah. So like all these big businesses shut, and then the big round toilet, there's heaps of that. Mm-hmm. There's just no quilting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's like
I think we invented that stress, Australia.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. I think we were one of the first viral videos.
Okay.
That went globally about it.
Yeah, damn. Crazy times.
Yeah. I remember I used to clean carpets during that period, and I remember on the tail end, you go into people's homes, you're cleaning carpet, and you'll see in the cupboard piles of toilet paper in some of these houses. And you go, you fed into the hysteria. I thought that was always funny.
You're a hoarder.
Not me. I meant other people. Like me going into other people's houses. You'd see it.
There's a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode about that where they're all at a party at Larry David's house, and then they find out that he's a hoarder, and they'll ostracize him. Pretty funny.
Yeah. Probably should have called him out. But. So that's the difference between the GFC and the COVID crisis in Australia. Of the different approaches and the different reasons for.
Yeah. Now,
so that's why our lag is different.
Yeah, I mean if that would sort of make sense. And then now it's unemployment's very low, so it's not like the crash.
But I do want to give you points for that. I've never heard it. Pauline Hanson's little rise in the 90s.
Yeah,
I've never heard it attributed to that recession.
Right.
Yeah, I've never heard it like that. Because it is.
It's a theory. Yeah,
it's a theory. It is a theory, but I've never heard it that way. That's good. Yeah.
It's a theory.
It makes sense.
It's a theory, and then people sort of give into their worser.
Because the go-to answer is like, there was this influx of Asians.
Yeah.
In the 70s, 80s, and 90s because of Vietnam War, developing country, blah blah blah. We were letting people in because we needed a workforce.
Yeah.
Coupled with this little recession that we needed to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. It all kind of comes together. This is crazy. This is like in my head. My head's blowing up now.
It's an interesting.
Just all these dots being connected. Like I've heard all these bits of information separately, and then it's all coming together.
It's an interesting hypothesis. There's totally I'm sure. Well, someone's probably already written a PhD about it, but it's an interesting topic for for study for sure. So it's not, unemployment's low in Australia now, but inflation's higher, and also there's this there's this housing crisis, which is just in most of the country, it's just really, really, really hard to be able to afford to rent or buy, and then the story goes that One Nation voters really care about housing, which I kind of I'm not sure about. I
think you mentioned that more before of if they could buy a 3-bedroom home, for $200,000, One Nation wouldn't exist.
Yeah, that's the story anyway. But if you ask One Nation voters why are you voting One Nation, they don't say it's because of housing. So Redbridge did a poll and they asked, what reason, what thing motivates your vote? No big surprise, immigration is number one. One Nation voters.
Oh, they're specifically asking One Nation people.
No, everybody.
Everyone.
So One Nation voters say, immigration number one. That's my biggest reason for voting for One Nation. But 4% of them said housing. So I don't know. Take from that what you want. Maybe maybe they would be less upset about immigration if they had cheaper housing. Maybe, I don't know.
Yep. Possibly. Like if the housing was cheaper, there'd be more houses. So then.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I'm going to take my jacket off. I'm too hot.
Yeah, sure. Cut. That's the OnlyFans.
We're going to take a quick commercial break.
GDP per capita tells us something, but it's blunt. What happens when we look at the inequality instead?
Yeah, so we spoke about inequality last episode, and I was saying how income inequality in Australia is pretty good by the global standards, but asset inequality is this big wide chasm, and housing's a big part of that story.
Mm-hmm.
So this sort of kind of feeds into that economic argument, I suppose. But that being said, GDP per capita in Australia is there's another graph we'll get up. It's the growth is very high in the early 2000s, and then it's just on this sort of slow up and down trajectory down. It goes into negative territory, so it's negative GDP per capita growth, which is like a GDP per capita recession, bad in 2020 for obvious reasons, because we shut down the whole economy, and then it goes up again, and then it sort of bottoms out again. But the overall trend is, the GDP per capita in Australia has been trending down. The trend line is a slight downward trajectory since 2000.
Okay.
There's some interesting economic theories about this. There's this thing called convergence, which I think is sort of like, I don't know, it's contentious. Like, it's not like, people disagree with it, but the idea is basically that like the Western countries have they create all this technology that allows them to be much more productive, and their GDPs grow, and eventually the more and more capital expenditure stops churning out more productivity and more growth, so they get diminishing returns on the investment in Western countries. Meanwhile, developing countries, they get to there's diffusion of all of the stuff that the Western countries have learned. So Western countries have learned how to farm more efficiently, and they've created the internet and all this technology, and that gets adopted by developing countries, and then developing countries catch up. The convergence is a theory that eventually the whole world's going to sort of meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Or most of the world will meet in the middle. And if you go back to the
because like it's going to be cheaper for sub-Saharan African countries, as an example, to adopt renewable energies like wind, solar, blah, 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 than it was for developing countries to adopt it.
Yeah, because somebody's already invented it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, they don't have to invent it. They just have to start using it.
The same reason we're not filming this with film.
Yeah.
We're using it on digital cameras.
Yeah. So that's the theory. And then if you look at the Lackner and Milanovic paper, then it did definitely it looks like convergence is sort of happening, by and large. But you're like, psychically, for the working class, middle class in Western countries, that feeling of going backwards is tough.
Yeah. Yeah, because
even though they're still a lot richer than the developing countries, the developing countries by and large have sort of been, the trajectory's been up. And the Western countries, it's been flatlining or dipping a bit, which makes people upset and nostalgic, because they go, why isn't my life like my parents' life?
So it's less of an asset story, more of an income.
Well, I suppose asset inequality is shooting off at the same time. So you're going like, the general standard of living, like, real income growth is flatlining or going backwards, and then also asset inequality is like making you envious of your neighbors because they have a $4 million house or whatever it is. So it's it's a story of like this sort of this vibe of like slow decline in which I feel like in the UK they call it broken Britain. It's like this meme, like and then in the States there's like the opioid crisis, and all of these previously thriving industrial towns that are shells, and it's super depressing. Like Appalachia, and like the poverty there is
where there's like some mining happening in that period there.
Yeah, and then it goes away.
Then you got the what is it, the Rust Belts, like around the lakes where all the manufacturing happened in the US.
Yeah,
and that all got sent to old Mexico,
and it's tough, and it makes people angry, and then they vote. But then there's this there's this horseshoe in like theory of like the far left and the far right sort of meeting in the middle, because they horseshoe on the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I think is like, I hope it's not naive, but I'm worried that it is. So this is like, Bernie Sanders and the populist left saying that we need to focus on economic distribution and fairness in the tax system, and that will bring this big voting majority together of the populist right and the populist left, and we'll all walk off into the utopian sunset because everybody will just, like it's not white versus black. It's the billionaires versus the working people.
Yeah, it was shifted away from us versus them and more of a class.
Yeah. So we have class solidarity. Like us on the populist left have class solidarity with those on the populist right, and we can come together and we can overthrow the real enemy. And
yeah, because on that US, with the US example, it's like that. How much. What are the differences in wants of the inner city, ethnic black people and white people as well, and the outer country white people?
Yeah,
they both have similar wants, don't they?
They're both poor.
Yeah, they're both poor.
They both want to live in abundance.
They want a stable house. They want to own their house. They don't want to rent. Yeah. They want a stable job.
Yeah,
and they want to be able to have kids.
Yeah,
have grandkids.
Yeah,
like previous generations did.
Yeah, totally. I think I've got a little clip. We're gonna watch.
We can.
We'll put it up.
So just before you answer we'll play the clip in a second. But it's like, so does that weaken the economic explanation or strengthen it? All of this.
How do you mean?
Yeah, what I'm getting at is that if it is this horseshoe theory of, the right and the left, blah blah blah, they both have the same wants, both needs, they both got the same economic issues, and if we could shift it to be the class warfare rather than against each other, and give everyone these $200,000 houses, 3 bedrooms, blah, 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 wherever they want to live, and don't have to, keep moving out and out and out, then that would be the solution, the economic solution. It wouldn't have anything to do with the social.
Yeah.
Kind of. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's the dream, right? Like that's the left wing politics dream, is that you can, the people are only, voting for these like nativist, racially charged parties because they're hurting economically. If we could just get the economy fairer, then we would bring everybody together, and we'd live.
Like I'll suddenly, not me personally, but putting my, one nation hat on, I guess it's like I'll hate immigrants more. I'll hate immigrants less if we all got a house, and could live happy kumbaya economically.
Yeah. That's the dream.
Yeah.
That's the dream.
I think I was talking about it the other day, where it's like, this will be the cultural issue and probably the social media front as well. It's because it's a problem you can point at.
Yeah, totally.
Potentially.
Well, it's an easy thing to scapegoat, sadly. And it feeds into like, really divisive politics. Like I'm personally like worried about the next few years in Australian politics because, you look at how far ahead the Labor is on 2-party preferred from the coalition. Let's jump for joy and, sing hooray if you agree with that Labor point of view. But then there's a seedy underbelly that's sort of percolating. It's, I think, with the Liberals getting pulled right and One Nation is ascendancy. It's like, it's kind of, I don't know. I think we could have a really ugly few years. But anyway, let's look at Bernie Sanders talking. This is Bernie Sanders talking to some Trump voters in West Virginia, and bridging this gap in the horseshoe. So Bernie Sanders, far left, Trump voters in West Virginia, you'd think, maybe far right.
Yeah.
We'll play it and we'll have a chat.
Let me throw out a question. Yeah. You are living, shock of all shocks, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Do you feel that down here?
No. People are not surviving. We just had our food bank yesterday. We usually pack for 80 people. We served 102 yesterday. It is getting worse. Nobody's surviving right now.
My husband works at the hospital, and there are several ODs every single day.
Only a town of 6,000.
Yeah, we're not a big town.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you reckon?
All over. I don't know. I'm sure there's probably 15, maybe 20 years ago, I remember being a kid in a food bank, my mum,
Damn.
and you'd buy like bulk throwing out products that probably very close to expiry date. And you kind of have to eat all that yogurt pretty quick, otherwise it'll ruin you. Silly 10-year-old Ethan probably ate way too much yogurt. It's too much probiotics for one little fella. But yeah, from what I'm hearing is, the lines are probably a lot bigger now than they were, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even.
Yeah. So, Bernie Sanders is out there. I mean, God bless him for going out and talking to people who probably don't agree with him and finding common ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely, I mean, I don't know how to fix this mess, but we've all got to live together.
Yeah.
Don't we?
Yeah.
So, we've got to find a way to find commonality. In Australia, that is going to mean, we hope that, I hope that those One Nation voters don't drift too far off into, grievance and outrage.
Yeah. Potentially turning into something it may or may not be, whether it's a social issue or cultural issue.
Yeah.
When at the root of it, maybe it is an economic issue.
Yeah. Well, there might be, what I'm scared of is there might be naivety in thinking that, like
that it's just economic or.
Yeah. Like, I think that it's a really rosy story that people with left-wing ideals can tell themselves that, papers over some really, I mean, the economy's hard, but like social cohesion and race relations is really hard.
It's really hard, and it's an important thing too.
Yeah, for sure.
What we'll do, I think, is maybe close this one out.
Yeah.
Part one, this was the economic explanation or exploration as well of, why the rise of One Nation. And we'll do part two on the cultural front.
Yeah.
I don't know. The topic just seemed very heavy. Oh, no. There was a lot to be explored in this first part.
Yeah.
Unintentionally. We were hoping to try and get it all done in one, but we'll. Yeah.
Right.
You're happy with that?
Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for listening to GIRT. I'm Ethan. That's Owen.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Have a good one.